a lot of the kids, like you were saying, that do feel isolated and things so many kids are suffer with anxiety and depression and all of those things. And I think that it ultimately stems from a, a lack of emotional intelligence when they were younger, like
Well,
their
and a lack of
regulation, the learning to
regulation. I think
regulate
that's the thing,
themselves.
is that a
Yeah.
dysregulated nervous system will do a lot of things to create safety, right?
Yeah.
We are, we, at our very basic, we will survive. So if we don't have the things in our environment that teach us how to be with ourselves in a way that feels validating, like we're okay, like we're loved, and like we have community, and that connection is safe. So what happens when somebody is dysregulated and you spank them, for example, is now connection is not safe.
Yeah.
Right. And so we gotta work on creating the repairs for correction, or for connection is safe. And then you've got a group of people who can figure out what to do here, and they don't have to get outside of their body. They don't have to numb. They don't have to, use any manner of things to dissociate from themselves. They can be with themselves, and with their peers.
Yeah. Hello there. I'm Tammy Ramsey with Beautiful Chaos. Stacy Miller is not with us today. Darn it. Well, actually, we don't have enough chairs. I am here with a fabulous guest, Kimi Eames. She's actually my sister-in-law. She's a guru with kids, and she is actually a licensed clinical social worker who currently is in private practice. And the reason I approached her was because I have watched her with her 5-year-old son now. Well, actually 5.5, right?
Yes.
I have watched her with him. I have watched her help our oldest daughter, Trishelle, with all their kids. And you also did a training with Trishelle at her daycare, Buttercups. So she is somebody that is very good at helping people through emotions. That's kind of what you do, right? With adults, though, on an adult level.
Yeah. So specifically, I'm a trauma therapist, and my specialty is working with adults with like early childhood trauma, essentially.
Yeah. Which is great because she's going to catch the rear end of all of us things that us parents do. So my husband always says there's no child that comes through childhood unscathed. And sometimes what we think is minimal, they see as maximal. And sometimes there is actually true. I mean, there is, abuse and all kinds of wickedness in the world. But anyways, we're going to talk about how to help your kids recognize and deal with their emotions. And I want to first start off by just giving a little story. In 1990s, when my daughter was born, if your kid threw a temper tantrum in the store, you were supposed to walk away from them or spank them right there in the line, which I did do. And she did get up and we did go to the car, but she bawled the entire time. So, but back in the 90s, that was, you walked away and you were spanking kids. Prior to 90s, it was yours to be seen and not heard, and you're going to get a spanking or timeout, or you get a timeout and then a spanking. And then in the 2000s, some of it changed, and it was more, okay, you're going to start with a timeout. You're going to try to talk to the child. You didn't really talk about emotions. You're just going to try to talk to them down off the ledge in a way. And then if that didn't work, you could spank, but spanking was starting to fade out, and it was starting to be told that, it wasn't a good thing for you. So in the 2000s, when mid 2000s, when my son was like 4 or 5, and my granddaughter actually came along, so it was about 15 years ago. It was really all about recognize their emotions. They're acting out because of some emotional trauma that they're having, or emotional response that they're having that they don't know how to deal with, because let's face it, as adults, we don't even know how to deal with our emotions. So let's talk about how this day and age, it's now about emotional coaching and some calm down strategies and all of the things. And the first question I'm going to ask you, because I think it's very important to understand development of our brain. So at what age does the but does the emotional regulation area of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, form?
Well, so it's you know, it's formed at birth, but it's developing, and you don't get really all of the benefits of it, and it's not fully developed until 25, I think. So you're getting access to varying degrees or varying levels of it over childhood. Really the goal of early childhood is, because we don't have access to that part of our brain, which is the emotion regulation part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that helps us to problem solve and really think through, plan, action.
And consequences, the actions and consequences.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So because it's not developed in early childhood, 0 to 6, we're talking, it's the goal, it's the primary job of the caretaker to regulate emotion. So the term we use now is called co-regulation. And through co-regulation is how children develop that part of their brain. So one of the things that I think has gone missing for many generations in certain cultures is this process of co-regulation, because what parents were doing before is punishing, right?
Right. We're just trying to get them to stop the behavior in any quick fashion we can, not even thinking about what they're going through and the opportunity that you have to teach them.
Right. It's been more about what's happening for the adult.
Right. Yeah.
The focus has historically been mostly on the adult is uncomfortable, so we need to like make the child do something different.
Right.
So what we're really focusing on these days is what's happening inside the body of the child. The lower parts of our brain.
The amygdala. Is that the amygdala?
Yeah, well, the amygdala is in there. The limbic area of the brain is and the brainstem are the two parts of our brain that are functioning well at birth.
Okay.
So survival and understanding or processing emotions. So expressing emotions is the limbic part of the brain. Survival is the brainstem, right? So these two parts of the brain are online and working well at birth.
So, and let's just clarify, expressing emotions doesn't mean that it's all hearts and flowers and we're happy. It's those that like, I can't, like when you get so mad you see red, that's your child. Like they're angry or they're hurt and they just go boom into their emotion, right? Like it's a reaction.
That's all they have access to is their feelings. They don't have any access to words. The words language comes from the prefrontal cortex. That's this part of our brain. So they don't have any access to that. All they have access to is feeling. Right. So what they're really trying to do is just express feeling to get some assistance. That is the evolutionary goal of this process.
Right. Which
babies cry so that the adults come toward them. Yeah.
Yes.
And the same is happening through early childhood. So they are crying to alert you there is a problem.
Right.
And if we can switch, the real goal probably here is on the parents really having a very different idea of what's happening, because we are storytelling beings, right? We will create a story. And what happens for adults is that we see what's going on in a young body and we have an interpretation of that, but it's based on our experience, our body, our history, all of the things. Mm-hmm. Not based on their experience, because we don't understand their experience.
Right. We don't remember their experience that we once had, but we don't remember that.
Well,
so we're clueless.
And when we were that age, we didn't have language, so we didn't have a story, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have access to that. So if we can see what's happening in the body of a child as an expression of distress, like if we just say it that way.
That's a good way to look at it, yeah.
Then it calls upon us to come toward them with some assistance, right? So,
right. And with more compassion than if we're looking at it as you're just trying to be manipulative, you're trying to get your way, whatever story we tell ourselves.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which is based on an adult's, if an adult was acting this way,
it would make
That's how
sense
we
that
would, that's how we would interpret that behavior, right? But this is a child. They have neither the context of that,
Mm-hmm.
nor the language or understanding of that sort of complexity of relational
Right.
dynamics. So
Right.
I think just helping the adults see that what they need is our help
Can change a lot of it. So let's talk about and you brought up crying, but let's say everybody has had that moment in their lives when their child has had a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
Now, and I will say, like, if you're going shopping, people, I really believe for me, what's worked with the 10 grandkids and 3 kids I've had, that I learned through all of them, sorry to all of them for any damage caused. No kidding. But is that if I have a conversation with them, even if they're 2 or 3, like they're smarter than we think they are, if I have a conversation with them prior to the store and that says, okay, we're going to go into the store and we're going to get XYZ for dinner tonight. And we're not going to buy a toy today. However, you know, if I want to add in, but if you want to help me with XYZ, then, you know, maybe next time we'll have time to peruse and we could get you something that you wanted. Like, however your parenting style is. But I just found that preparation going into a store helps. But let's talk about now your kid is throwing down in a grocery store and upset. What should we do as parents and co-parents? I mean, and first off, recognize right off the bat to look at them as they're distressed. They're having an emotion they don't know how to deal with.
Yeah, even rage, right? Rage or disappointment. So the way I try to think about it is, if I'm reading a book and someone comes and snatches my book out from underneath my eyes,
Yeah,
it's in my lap, and someone takes it from me, I'm going to have a very natural response of anger and frustration. I have the filter at my age to be able to say, like, whoa, hang tight, what is happening here? But children don't, right? Because that requires the prefrontal cortex. So if we can also just sort of imagine, like, of course, when you go in to a store, by the way, very overstimulating. There's a lot of sensory experience in there. So for young brains, it's a lot. Yeah. And stores are built for marketing so that kids want stuff.
Yes, at eye level for them. So
of course they're going to have some dysregulation. That makes that we would be concerned about their brain development if they didn't. So it's actually good news if they are wanting everything in the aisle. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is to regulate yourself. So we have these things in our brain called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are amazing in that they help children to mimic. So you notice that, like, children with older siblings, learn things faster than children who, like my child who's a solo kid. So, and that's because of these things called mirror neurons. They can mimic and learn by watching, which is great. So the other thing that mirror neurons do is that if you have a regulated adult caretaker in your presence, then the mirror neurons of the child will come online. They will start to, like, come down, help the body come down. That is part of how co-regulation works. But the opposite is true. If you are not staying regulated as the adult, you will mirror them. And so that, I think, is the trickiest piece, and the piece that adults maybe don't quite understand or really remember, is that if I don't keep myself in my own body, and also not telling stories, because, like, the thing that gets me sideways in a store when my kid's throwing down is, like, you're disrespecting me and other people are watching me be disrespected. Right. That'll get me fast. Yeah. And so if we can keep tabs on that, right, and so context is everything. Context helps our brain, and context helps kids. So the context is, this child is overstimulated. They are being attacked is the wrong word, but kind of marketing sort of attacks our brains. It's like grabs us, right? They're being sought after in major ways. So of course they're feeling these things. It's okay. And I also would say so keeping us regulated and also giving ourselves flexibility to leave the store. Because what I would say is connection over correction is what you always want to remember. If you can connect to the kid, get them out of, if they're not able to regulate in the store, then take them out of the store.
And that means, I mean, are you physically picking up the child as they're kicking and screaming?
Yeah.
And just take them out to the car. And
you got to do what you got to do, right? You're not manhandling in a scary way, but you are having to remove them.
Right. You could be speaking words of calm and thinking to yourself calm so that that helps regulate yourself, right?
Totally. I mean, do not underestimate the power of someone else's body.
Yeah.
In your presence. Like, it is very hard to stay regulated when a child's losing their mind.
Well, on multi-levels too, because I'm an empath. Like, I pick up on people's feelings. And when I was younger, I didn't understand that sometimes I would get upset, but it was because the child was upset.
Right.
And I'd have to stop myself and be like, wait, I wasn't upset like 20 minutes ago. Totally. So this isn't my feelings. This is this person's feelings, whether it was, whoever it was. So yeah, so that makes total sense. So you could be more susceptible on different levels, but it's really good to almost be like a psychologist or a clinical social worker. It's take yourself out of the situation is a great way of regulating, and just be the observer of what's happening so that you don't get caught up in the feelings, like you're saying.
Totally. And one of the things that I think helps me get real sideways is pressure, like time pressure or eyes on me. So the times when I'm going to lose it the most with my kid is in the morning when we have somewhere to be at a certain time, or if I'm in a store or in a situation and my kid is sophisticated.
He's very, very smart. He's so smart.
And so he's got lots of like language and uses lots of big words these days, which is great in some ways, but it can also be quite activating for me because he's using words like, who knows, like, you're the most evil mom ever, like that sort of thing. And then you've got all these people around, It's just like, that's the stuff that will get me sideways. And so if I'm in that space, then I can't help him.
Right.
So I have to do something. And I do this with my partner too. My partner and I also take timeouts with each other. Like, if we're getting too much, we have to take a timeout so that we can like calm our body and then come back to it as a regulated nervous system. So I guess that's what I would say. The other thing to keep in mind with kids, facial expressions are really powerful, and we read them at an unconscious level. Okay, so
especially women. I think women more mothers. But mothers that are the usually a higher percentage of the caretaker. I think that because we've read them from an infant when they had no language, that and dads have that bond too, but I don't know. I can tell right off the bat when something's wrong with any of the kids, just because I've seen them as a baby. I've read them as a baby when they're not verbal and just the cry or whatever, So I don't know. Maybe that's sexist. Sorry, don't offend anybody.
I wasn't gonna say it, but since you did, I just think that facial expressions for us, we can read them, but kids are reading our facial expressions.
Oh,
and it wasn't until a little bit later when my son had more language that he would say, "Your face looks scary."
Oh,
and I actually came to this. His school was doing his preschool teachers did an incredible job, and they did some education with us, and we were talking about meltdowns and like, how do you manage them? And they said tone of voice and facial expressions. And it was in that moment that I was like, she's like responding to me, because I don't use a lot of big language with him, or I didn't consistently, but he would often like be set off by something. And when I started paying attention to my facial expressions and my tone of voice, I realized like I was actually setting him off.
Oh,
I was actually often causing the meltdown.
Yeah.
Because he was scared and he knew I was upset. And that was really impactful for him.
Well, and that goes back to your partner in life and some previous episodes that we've talked about. don't talk angrily in front of your child, young, I think, because they don't understand the difference between, maybe you're yelling into a phone and they think that you're upset with them. It's not, they just know you're upset. So then they feel like they're going to mirror it with the micro neurons, right? Of,
Totally.
okay, you're upset. So now I got to be upset because something's going on. So sometimes they don't understand our verbal words and what we're saying, even if it's an argument. And I'm a firm believer, like, you could have a little bit of a spat in front of your kids as they get older, but you need to take it in another room and discuss it. And I think, but I could be wrong. But
I think context is so important. Like, just putting
Yes.
words to it. Mom and dad are upset.
Yes.
We're working it out. It's kind of like when you and so-and-so get upset, we're going to be okay. You're okay. You know,
like
that
that.
sort of thing. Like, really putting words and language to things. Because again, kids don't have access to as much language early. And even when they're older, and for adults as well, when we get dysregulated, we don't have as much access to language as you can probably imagine. Times when
yes.
you've like gotten really sideways.
Oh, yes.
And you can't find your words. And that's because when the bottom parts of our brain, the survival mechanism, so fight, flight, or freeze, there's a fourth one, cling, for young children. Cling, you'll notice. Babies cling. And or when we get really emotional and we call it, well, actually Dan Siegel calls it flipping the lid. Dan Siegel is a person I highly recommend. You don't have access to this part of the brain because it's not really connected to the rest of the brain. Your bottom parts of your brain hijack.
Yeah, the amygdala hijacks your emotions and off you go. Been there, done that.
So you don't have access to language. So if somebody can put language to it, it can be sometimes really helpful. Now, the other thing I say is you have to raise the kid you have. We have this idea about parenting, which is that we can raise the kids we want to have, right? We can teach them to sleep in the way that we want them to sleep. We can, if you just take them to go do things when they're young, then they'll have more resilience for being out and about, which is to some extent true, but you also have to take the kid you have. So my kid, if I name a feeling for him, brings it bigger. So I learned to name feelings, right? So I'd be like, I know you're angry, and he would just lose his mind. Like, he would be a little bit angry and then he would like full on rage. So I had to learn that naming his feelings was not helpful. It was like too exposing. It was like, then he felt also embarrassed.
Yeah. Or he probably felt like he had to be defensive, like that in some way.
I don't know. It just got like really, really big. So even now when he gets upset, I just don't say anything. I just, do you need some help? Do you want a hug? Or do you want me close to you, or do you want some space? So proximity, getting close, or getting some space is also a really helpful thing to keep in mind. So tone of voice, facial expressions, keeping in mind the context of the situation. Is it too much sensory information? Is it too loud, too bright, too something? So removing them from that, or giving them space. Do they need a little bit of space, or do they want a hug? Right.
And sometimes you have to wait for them to, if they're throwing a tantrum. Let's go back to the tantrum scenario. If they're throwing a tantrum, sometimes, well, I have a grandson that'll take himself out of the room and go put himself in like a timeout, and he'll stay in their ball, and I'll go in there immediately and give that, do you want closest? Do you want me to be here with you? Do you want a hug? And he's like, no. And he wants to cry, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna let you feel your feelings, and I walk out, and then I wait, and then I come back a few minutes later. Okay, I love you, and I understand that you're mad because this happened, and maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah.
Would you like to have a hug? And then at some point, he eventually is like, yeah, I just want a hug. And then I hug him, and then it's like, everything's okay. And then once he's calmed down, then I can talk to him about.
Then you can teach.
So here, so it looks to me like, do you think this is what happened? Do you think? So maybe you were mad at your brother because he took a toy right out of your hands that you were playing with. So was that what happened? Do you feel mad? Like, And I find if I do a facial expression and the, then he ties in, well, yeah, it made me really mad.
Yeah.
And then, so that's helpful. But I also want to say, great saying is, children are not meant to be molded, but unfolded.
Right.
And all kids personalities are different from birth. And the way you raise one kid is a little different on how you raise another kid.
And you're also talking about the nervous system sensory experience. Like some kids are really quite
sensitive, or
I wasn't going to use the word sensitive because I think it can get kind of this like negative connotation, like he's really sensitive. But some kids are more aware. Their brains take in more information, sensory information. So they take in more like things in the environment they can hear. Things feel louder inside their body, or when it is loud, it does things inside their body that it maybe doesn't for other kids.
Like a big crowd, and like
Right.
cheering crowd might be like so overwhelming for some kids, where other kids are like, my house is like this.
Yeah, exactly. And this context information, you just want to be kind of like a researcher with kids. Like my kid wouldn't go to the bathroom in bathrooms outside of our house. And it was like, what is happening here?
This is not handy.
I knew he was raised in COVID, so at first it was fine, but then it was like not fine. And it was that bathrooms are really noisy, right? The flushing of the toilet is incredibly intense when you have certain kinds of what is the
like the tile aesthetics? It would be aesthetics, right?
Aesthetics is how it looks.
But it would be the tiles.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever.
Anyway.
That stuff. It's loud in the bathroom. You know when you walk in there with heels and it's like, you're like echoing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So he did not like that experience. So it was like when we figured that out, then we figured out we could help him to like close, cover his ears and things like that.
Teaching him self-regulation. Teaching him.
Right. That he has the skills. He
Yes.
can do it. There are things that he can do to help himself in those moments. But
yes.
I have to understand the context of what's upsetting him first.
Right.
Which is impossible with kids who are not verbal enough.
Yeah. Or if you're a, full-time working parent and you get home and you got to cook dinner and do things and I would say, because been there, done that, I've lived both worlds, being a full-time parent and then being a stay-at-home sort of kind of mom. And I think that eye contact and spending at least 20 minutes quality, I'm on the floor, I'm on the level, can help you connect with your child, which can help with maybe understanding a little better what things drive them crazy. Because sometimes we don't even know for ourselves what things drives us crazy until we're in it.
Right, which is also how we teach kids self-awareness, is by being tuned into them and seeing what's going on and helping them put language to it. Then they have that language for themselves as they grow. It's not going to be there. You have to keep repeating it, right? Kids,
right.
Somebody told me that kids have to hear something 500 times before it becomes
real. I don't know if I believe that. I think your son has a photographic memory, so I think you could tell him once. He's not the norm, but yeah, there's different personalities. Like some kids, I feel like learn things like that, and it's not a repeat. And some kids, it's like it's 501 times.
Yeah,
and you just want to pull your hair out. So let's see what. I feel like that you start at a really young age, maybe even infancy, as teaching feelings, right? Like what?
Totally. Yeah, you're just saying, again, like 500 times. They have to hear it 500 times before it becomes a real thing. So you're just always naming it. And you also need to name it inside of you at times when they're not dysregulated, because we don't learn when the lower parts of our brain are kind of in charge. It's hard for us to learn and take in information. So this is also like kids at school who are really struggling. Part of the reason may be that they're not feeling regulated in their body enough. Another subject, another podcast.
There you go.
We were just talking about
teaching. What age do you start teaching, and how? And let's talk about how. Let's say an infant. We're starting in infancy, because you talked about facial expressions and tones, and then are you also naming? Well, like, oh, you're so happy. Are you putting
Yeah.
Or
I know it's so hard.
it's so hard to have your diaper changed. That's the one I do when the babies are crying. I know it's so hard.
That's right.
So yeah, okay. So we're naming their emotions as just everyday stuff. We're naming
also naming our own. I think because to also normalize it, right? Like,
right.
I'm feeling really angry, or like last week I had a dental procedure, and I was telling my son I'm feeling nervous about it. My body's, I had a hard time sleeping last night because he also struggles with some of that stuff, and he thinks about things a lot. And it really helps to feel like, oh,
I'm not alone in this.
It's normal. It's okay to feel these things. It's okay to feel nervous, and we still go to the dentist appointment, right?
Yes.
It's okay to feel scared, and you still do it. And I feel scared, but I also trust my dentist, and I know that, so you're sort of just talking through things with kids so that they they get more and more context for the world and for you and for them and for what's normal. And my kid was struggling with some kids at school. We'll call him Johnny, was being mean to him, and as per his report, being mean to him. And so I said, oh yeah, I get it, that's hard. I don't like it when people say mean words to me either. It's okay if you don't want to play with Johnny. I wonder if Johnny's having a hard time. Because sometimes when I'm having a hard time, I can say some mean words too. Have you seen me say mean words? I'd be like, yeah, you have a mean voice. Yeah, sometimes when I'm having a hard time, I can have a mean voice. But then when I'm not having a hard time, do I have a better voice? Yeah. So it's like teaching kids also to understand that, like, it's not personal. It's not that he doesn't like me. I mean, he may not like me, and that's also okay.
It's okay.
But it's like, I don't know what's happening for Johnny. Maybe he is just saying mean words because he likes it, or maybe there's something else going on.
Well, and two things out of that is, I wish that I had been taught to kind of think things through like that and be like, those are mean words. Mm-hmm. I don't have to tell myself a story about those words and what they mean. I could just say, those are mean words, because that labels it. He's not a mean kid. He's mean words.
He's saying mean words.
And then you're teaching compassion in the next one. Put yourself in his shoes, and I always talk about, somebody on Facebook was complaining, and it was in our school district, about a bully and how their child had been bullied and by this kid and da-da-da-da. And everybody's like so mad about the bully. And I jump on and I'm like, well, bullying's not a great thing, but I wonder what's going on with the kid that's bullying.
Right.
What's happening to that child at home or in his school environment? Like, what is happening with him, and what is he feeling that is causing him to act out in those ways?
So that leads me, and I know we're probably close to time, but that leads me, one other thing is, like, if we don't teach our kids how to co-regulate young, then they grow into bodies that don't know how to regulate when they're older.
Right.
And then they do things to try to regulate themselves, right? One of the ways we can regulate our body is to yell or say mean words. Like, that does help us feel better sometimes. I don't know if you've ever been, a little self-righteously angry, but it's a delicious feeling.
When you're in it, it is.
But right, so what happens with us as people is that when we don't feel like what's happening inside of us is okay, and we're going to be okay as we ride that out, then we start to do things outside of us to make us feel okay. We start controlling other people. We start behaving in ways to try to create the soothing that we need, the comfort that we need in here. And oftentimes that's really unhelpful. We've got a real generation of kids who are isolating, who are alone, feeling like nobody likes them. I'm worried. What my concern is, when you've got a whole community talking about a bully, is that then that further isolates, I'm guessing,
that child.
Yeah.
They didn't name him, but still,
like, everybody knows who it is in this small community, right? Yeah. So now you've got a kid who's further isolated, and who now has someone, because what happens when we don't like what we feel and we don't know what to do with it is we start to blame other people for it. Right? So my son, Johnny's mean. Johnny's being mean to me. Well, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. Doesn't feel good when people say things that hurt. But what can you do when when he says words like that. Well, I can go talk to a teacher. I can go play with someone else. I can go do whatever, right? So you're teaching our kids what it feels like. It's okay to feel that. What can you do when you feel those things so that we're resourcing them? We're also saying, and I understand Johnny's having a hard time. I'm not sure what's going on for Johnny, but maybe we can give Johnny another chance today.
Yeah, I love that. And boy, just think about, there's a lot of the kids, like you were saying, that do feel isolated and things. So many kids suffer with anxiety and depression and all of those things, and I think that ultimately stems from a lack of emotional intelligence when they were younger, like
and a lack
regulation,
of
learning
regulation.
to regulate
I think that's
themselves.
The thing is that a dysregulated nervous system will do a lot of things to create safety, right?
Yeah.
We are, at our very basic, we will survive. So if we don't have the things in our environment that teach us how to be with ourselves in a way that feels validating, like we're okay, like we're loved, and like we have community, and that connection is safe. So what happens when somebody is dysregulated and you spank them, for example, is now connection is not safe.
Yeah.
Right? And so we gotta work on creating the repairs for correction or for connection is safe. And then you've got a group of people who can figure out what to do here, and they don't have to get outside of their body. They don't have to numb. They don't have to, use any manner of things to dissociate from themselves. They can be with themselves and with their peers.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we had wanted to talk about negotiating, helping kids negotiate, because I've seen you do that too, but I think that's going to have to be a separate episode, because we could probably talk a whole 30 minutes on how to help your kids to play well with others, basically. And it's a regulation thing as well. So do you have any books that you can refer people to get started reading this? Because I know as a parent, every kid I had, I would search out the education that was at the time found appropriate, and try to do those things. So
so I'm sure there are more recent things, but the Dan Siegel is who I read. He wrote a book called The Whole Brain Child, which was really, really helpful in understanding like what's going on at different developmental stages. That was really vital for me, so that I didn't sort of attribute something happening with a 2-year-old that I could expect to happen with a 6-year-old. So I'm not asking a 2-year-old to be able to like do things that they shouldn't be able to do. Parenting from the Inside Out, which is kind of teaching about what's going on inside and helping this kind of what you're talking about, like helping kids understand what's happening inside of them. And he's got another book called The Yes Brain, which is another thing that you can do kind of in those moments of dysregulation when kids feel sort of powerless. You're in the store, they can't get what they want, and they're feeling powerless, is like giving them something that they have some power over in the moment. And because I'm not thinking about it right now.
Which could you help mom pick out a credit card to use? Should we use our debit card or the American Express? Do you want to put it in the machine?
Yeah, right.
Maybe that would be a kind of distraction instead of...
it's like helping them focus on what they can do rather than them staying in this space of feeling like they can't.
They just got shut down.
Yeah.
So I feel
so. Dan Siegel's great. I also highly recommend Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's got a book called Good Inside, which is basically like helping parents to realize so many things, not even just about kids, but also about ourselves, because most of us were not parented in a way that helped us feel like we're good. We were parented in this sort of shameful way of like, that's bad, which then kids take in the idea I'm bad, because that's what came from me, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But she does beautiful work around repair, because, we're all going to lose it. And we learn to spank our kids. And so the beauty about her work is that like you as a parent now can go back to your adult kids and say, I did some things based on the information I had at the time.
Yeah.
And I bet that didn't help you. And I want you to know you can talk to me about that. And You know, it's really basically the message is you're a good kid having a hard time.
I love that. You're a good kid having a hard time. So, and I want to say too that I actually through, and I'm all about therapy, counseling, whatever you need to help yourself. If it's not just reading on your own and these things help you, if you feel like you need further additional help, there's lots of counselors out there that can help. Because I think that we need to be in touch with our own emotions. So I love that last book you recommended. I will definitely be reading. I'll be reading all of those, but because I do think that it starts with us, and we were not raised that way for sure. And it helps for us to know how to name our emotions, to learn to process our emotions in a healthy way so that we're not lashing out. And I think that for our parents that raised us, that even knew less than us about parenting, I always felt like my parents did the best that they could. So I just have to know that they had the knowledge they had, just like you said, with the knowledge they had, they did the best that they could. And I have scars. We all have some scars, but we get through it. In the moment, you can just let it go and understand that they love you and they did whatever they did out of love, not out of harm, because it was what they knew. Well, I mean, I'm not saying in people that are abused, and I'm not taking that away from anybody. I'm saying, let's say a kind of normal childhood, maybe.
Well,
is there a normal childhood? There's just not.
I don't know.
We're not perfect. That's my
point. I
point.
love the word normal.
Yeah.
I think what I would say is it's okay to have grief about that. Like, yeah, that was because when kids are given the message that there's something wrong with them or it was dangerous to go to connection, they're going to have grief about that. And I think the thing that I would say before kind of giving parents grace is that we give ourselves grace. Like, it's okay for me to be upset about
feel that way. Yeah.
To be mad.
Yeah.
Or sad or all of it.
Name our feelings to ourselves.
And give ourselves space to do it.
Yeah. So homework, and thank you, Kimmy, for
welcome.
Joining me today. And I hope that we can get on and do a couple more episodes. So we'll talk about that later. You guys can like, share, and comment if you want. If there's anything you've liked or questions you might have, podcasts you'd like to see in the future. Your homework and takeaway from this is that emotional intelligence is important to help regulate your help regulate your and your child's nervous system. Teach them tools to help them to regulate themselves. And this week as homework, it is help your child name one emotion that they're having, whether they're happy or sad, or have a moment. If you have a moment of feeling strong about something, then give your child the context of it and share that with them. Our children are not stupid. And I mean, people have told me, I'll talk to a 2-year-old that's not even verbal other than yes, no, mom, dad, whatever. And I will have a conversation because I feel like their brains are like sponges, and they might not totally understand it now, but eventually they're going to get it at some point.
500 times.
500 times. Yeah. So if you start really young, you got it going on. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day. And remember to stay empowered.